the emotion scale is something that I sort of came up with from doing a lot of different work. So my background is in psychiatric occupational therapy, and right out of OT school, I was working in community mental health, and I was working with adults with long-term mental health disabilities. And I was said, go ahead and teach a class on stress management. So I went in there and I was like, we need to work against stress. We need to stop stress. And I almost immediately realized that just that sort of thinking created a wall of stress in and of itself. So that idea that like we have to fight against stress was not really what I wanted to be working with. I wanted to be working with developing calm, developing skills to increase feeling good in your body. And so I was also learning about motivational interviewing, which I'm not going to go into right now, but they use a lot of scaling to look at how your motivation for change, basically. And they use scaling, and I'll get more into this as I describe how to use the scale. But they use scaling to show people, to help people identify where they are on a scale in terms of feeling motivated for change. I also was learning about the zones of regulation. And I'm going to pull that up right now. And I know that a lot of people use, a lot of your therapists use the zones of regulation when they are teaching your children about emotions. So I'm just going to talk about the zones really quickly. So the zones here are blue, green, yellow, and red. Some of you may be familiar with them. This was a really amazing program developed by Leah Kuipers. She's a occupational therapist, and she developed this to help kids identify where they are in terms of zones. So a blue zone is kind of like slow and, you know, as you see some examples, feeling sad or tired or sick maybe. The green zone is kind of the zone that's in the middle, that's kind of the just right zone. These are all terms that she uses from terms that she uses in the zones of regulation. So the green zone is happy, calm, kind of just right, like feeling okay, ready to learn. The yellow zone is kind of, you could be kind of overexcited, or you could be feeling frustrated or worried. Sometimes I use it as kind of just feeling uncomfortable. And then the red zone, I always think of as the zone that's out of control, like yelling. You could be like so overexcited and over happy. You could be super terrified. You could be mad or angry. Again, that out of control is where you're kind of just too focused on what's going on in the moment, and you're not really able to even think about anything else, or even think about changing your emotion and how you're feeling. And so this zones of regulation is really great. So when I was working, I was working with a lot of kids and looking at this, and I started thinking, and I started actually, even some of the kids I was working with, and I'd say, well, what zone are you in? And they'd be like, I actually had one kid say, well, I'm in a yellow zone, but I'm almost really close to being mad, like really mad, in a red zone. And we sort of decided, well, maybe you're kind of in an orange zone. And so that's where I ended up coming up with this scale. Again, this combination of all of these different ways of looking at emotions. And I put it on more of a linear scale. So you can kind of see here that, sometimes you might be all the way down here. Yeah, it's red, and you might be out of control, but it's also really close to maybe a little bit red, but a little bit orange. And so the reason that I developed this scale this way, let me first explain how I do it. So first of all, there's a 1 and there's a 10. So the one I would look at as, sometimes I look at it as you can use it for lots of different ways. Let me see if I can add some words in here that you guys can see. So I kind of look at the one as the low end of the scale, and that, oh, that's not going to work. Okay, remember I said I was new at Zoom. Anyway, the one is like the low end of the scale. It's like bad or mad or sad or completely out of control, or we can just say thumbs down. The 10 is the higher end of the scale. So that might be feeling happy or good or calm or relaxed, or any variety of positive emotions. So we might say that's thumbs up. You can, for some of you who've used the bucket full lingo, you can use that as well as, like, 1 might be your bucket is empty and 10 might be your bucket is full. Now, some people might say, now, wait a minute, that's totally opposite of the way I learned scaling, is that, if you think about the pain scale, they might say, when you're in the hospital or whatever, is your pain a 1? That means no pain at all, or a 10, that's a lot of pain. So that would be more negative. But again, I kind of wanted to do it this way so that, and again, using that sort of bucket is full idea, that you're wanting to kind of grow the calm, the positive side of things. So a lot of times, and I know that when we're outdoors or indoors even, and we're working with littler kids, we might start with thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs in the middle. Thumbs up being a 10. And I like that visual because we all know thumbs up is great, right? And thumbs down is feeling bad, or thumbs in the middle is a 5. So that might be kind of just feeling sort of, not great, not bad, but just kind of in the middle. Does anyone have any questions about that so far? I don't know what, I can't see anything. Anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so I just keep talking to the screen. Okay, I'll keep talking to the screen. All right. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. So those are kind of ways to teach it. And I'll show you what we use out in the field. We actually have this that we use. It's a laminated card with the scale with our arrow that goes up and down, because we in OT love to laminate. So we can, and the kids love to use it to show kind of how they're feeling on the scale. So this is how we use it out in the field. Okay.
Can I buy one of this?
Can you buy $500? We'll make one for you. Yeah, and I will actually, we have just the scale that you can just print out.
Yeah, I don't want that. I want
you want the fancy
one.
arrow? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want.
I'm gonna have to ask one of my students to do that.
I'm not that creative.
Yeah, me neither. But it is great because it's this visual that the kids can really see. Okay, so that's kind of, oh, actually, let me tell you a couple more things about why I like the scale versus just using the zones. I feel like the zones, like I said, sometimes you might be in a green zone, but you might be kind of edging towards a little yellow. You might be starting to feel a little silly. You might be, maybe you're angry and you're kind of in the red zone, but you're not really totally out of control. And you might be able to move yourself up into like a yellow zone pretty easily. So what I love about this, and I'll often when I'm using this with the kids, I'll kind of just be moving the scale up and down all the time, because it shows that we are all moving up and down, moment by moment, second by second. And so it feels a little more fluid to me. So that's one of the reasons that I like it. Another thing that I try and do is teach kids that one is the absolute worst day in your whole life. I try not to use too many super negative things because I don't want to scare them. But one is not just you didn't get your favorite ice cream cake for your birthday. One is like somebody real that you love gets really hurt or something really, really scary happens. Um, And as an aside, I use this a lot when I'm talking about size of the problems too, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I use 10 as like best, best, best day ever in your whole life. And I'll give them examples for myself. Like, a 10 is like when I had a baby, it was the best day of my whole life, or something really, really huge. I like to use big examples so that they understand. They always want to go off the scale. And my arrow goes all the way off the scale, and they'll be like, look, see, it goes off the scale. I'm a 900. Okay, that's fine. And I'll go, yeah, okay, maybe, I might kind of say something like, yeah, maybe you're 100. So we can use this scale in hundreds, like 100, 90, 80, 70, all the way down. The reason I don't really want them to go off the scale is because if you go off the scale, and you can use whatever numbers you want, but if you're going off the scale, then it starts to kind of mucky up all of these different gradations as you're moving through. So I tried, like I said, they can come up with their own scale, and especially if you're working individually with kids, or if you're doing it with your own child at home, their scale can be whatever number they want, but we really try not have them go off the scale because it just gets really confusing. Okay, so as I was saying, you can use the scale to look at all kinds of emotions. Angry, calm, happy, sad, in control, out of control. One of the things that I do sometimes if I'm just using the scale and I want to try and and especially if I'm working with a kid individually, and again, at home, if you're doing this, I might use this for flavors of ice cream or food. You could do it for food. What is the food that you hate the most? The worst food ever? What's your favorite food in the whole wide world? The thing that you would want on your desert island if you only had one food on your desert island. And, a 5 could be something that you're willing to eat, but you're not super excited about it. So these are things that I do to help teach this kind of gradation, this kind of flow. Something that's really important in all of this, and this is important in the zones of regulation as well, in teaching the zones, is there's no such thing as a bad emotion, right? So you might feel, and this is something that's taught in the zones too, but you might feel way down here.
Can you say hi?
Hi. Sorry, but
hi. So you might feel way down here because something really scary and something really terrible happened, like, maybe a fire nearby. That's something that we all relate to a lot, right? There's a fire nearby, and that could be really, really scary. And so there's no time that emotions are bad. Again, I think on the scale, when you notice the flow up and down, I think that makes it a little easier to understand that it's typical that we have all these emotions. But that there are expected emotions. We use the emotion scale to learn how to move up and down the scale. Okay. So, did I skip something that I wanted to talk about? Nope. Actually, I'm going to show you this right now. So one of the things that's really helpful in using the scale or anything, anytime you're talking about self-regulation, emotional regulation, is helping kids to understand language for different emotions. And so I'm going to show you something that we use a lot. And you can use this at home or in a clinic or whatever. But we use a lot of emotions cards. I love these. I found these because this set has 80 different emotions, which is a lot. It also has real kids, which I think is really valuable for kids to see real kids with real emotions. And I also love that it shows a little bit of diversity too. Like all the kids there's kids from all different backgrounds. And their expressions are very, very big, so you can really see them. So I think this is a really good way to help with kids with learning different kinds of emotions, is to get some kind of cards, something where you can show them different people with different kinds of emotions. So I just wanted to show you guys that. All of these resources I can help you guys find too. There's all kinds of apps now and ways to find all of these different resources. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. So we talk about identifying emotions too. So again, the thing I like about the scale is you can name emotions, but you can also just use good and bad too. But let's say you're looking at glad. Well, where would glad be on here? That might be like an 8 or a 9, right? Happy let's say glad is an 8, happy could be like a 9, and then elated could be a 10. So you can also use it to teach about different gradations of emotions too. So that's a good way to use it as well. So let me talk about triggers too, because triggers is something that we can use on the scale. So I might talk about things that help you move up the scale and things that make you move down the scale. So let me talk about things that help you move up the scale. Sometimes I feel like we look at things very black and white. Like we say, oh, to whatever child we're working with, I see that you're having this really big emotion. You're really upset. How can you feel good again? And so we're sort of expecting them to look at life as like, I'm either way down here or I'm way up here, right? So I'm feeling bad. What am I going to do to make myself feel better? The way I like to use the scale is maybe a child is down here. So let's say that you're working with a child and they're really not feeling great, and you can use lots of reflective language with them. I see that you're feeling really upset, or I see that you're feeling really angry or mad. It looks like you might be a 3 on the scale. You're not the maddest I've ever seen you in your whole entire life. So I think you're about a 3 on the scale. What might make you move a little bit up the scale? Maybe just a couple of points. Again, it doesn't have to be what's going to make you go up to a 10, because a lot of times we might say what's going to make you feel better. And I think that's really valid to say to kids, but they might be saying in their head, oh, I have to feel good again. I'm supposed to do something that makes me feel good again. But you can help with helping them identify something that might make them move just a couple points up the scale, just to get them out of that almost red zone. So another thing that I like to use, and I'll show you this too, is, and I'm going to give you more specifics on how to use all this stuff at home or in the clinic. But another thing that you might want to use are some calm down cards. So ideas for them on things that might help them move up the scale a little bit. So for example, going to a quiet place, painting a picture. What we love to do outdoors is blow bubbles, reading a book, There might be things like taking a drink of water, putting your head upside down. So, ideas to help them. And again, sometimes seeing photos of other kids doing these things can be really helpful for them in identifying how to help themselves move up and down the scale. Okay. Any questions so far? I'll keep moving right along. Okay. So you're saying to yourself, how do I do this? How do I do this at home? How do I do this in the clinic? Um, one of the first things that I recommend that people do is get a scale yourself. Um, this is what my old scales used to look like. And sometimes I grab a piece of paper and I scribble it on a piece of paper. And, you don't have to have anything fancy, but I might, if I'm, somewhere where I don't have all my tools, I might go like this. And if you're a parent, you might do this. You might just have a visual scale like this. Can you see it? Sorry. There we go. I just scribbled it on a piece of paper. You can't see it, can you? It's a 1 and a 10 with a line, and it's got an angry face and a happy face. And so I might just do that. So the first thing I would do is say, have something on your wall at home that you can point to, whether it's something fancy, whether you print and laminate ours, or whether you just make something. Maybe have your child make it at home, or a kid you're working with in the clinic. You can have them make it themselves, and then they have a lot of ownership over it, which is super great. I would have it on the wall so you can point to it. I would also have on the wall is start a list, again, scribbling on a piece of paper, a list of things that make your child move up the scale. A lot of times we call them coping techniques or coping strategies. I just call them things that make you feel good. And if you have those, I mean, you can have it for yourself, for crying out loud, because we often forget what are the things that make ourselves feel good. Which leads me to role modeling. I think role modeling is a great way to do this. To even say to your child, I've said this to my own kid, or I'll say it out at camp when I'm with a whole group of kids and everyone's yelling at the same time. And I might say, I'm going down the scale. I feel like I'm a 5. I'm getting really frustrated because nobody's listening to me right now. And then I'll say, oh, but if I take a deep breath, that might make me move just a little bit up the scale. Or I love bubbles. If I blow some bubbles, that might make me move a little bit up the scale. I mean, you can do it when you're driving in the car, like, I'm feeling frustrated because we're late. I've had my son in the back of the car say, well, Mom, you need to do something to help yourself feel better. So role modeling is a great way to do it. So the more you have all of that stuff out and available, I think the more the kids start to use it. I think what's great about role modeling and what's great about the scale in general, like I said, I first started using this when I was working with adults. And it's something that we can all benefit from. I think, like I use the example of getting frustrated with kids. I use it with my child at home too. We all get frustrated with our kids, right? And so I think that when we use it and they see us using it, they see it's something that everybody uses. They're not getting pointed out as, oh, you're the one going down the scale. They know that it's something that we all need to do to take care of them, to take care of ourselves. So going back to the internal locus of control, what does this have to do with that? I have been working with kids where I see them going down the scale and I might say, oh, I see that you're down here, around a 4, whatever. I use some language, some reflective language, and some modeling to show them that I'm hearing them. I see that they're feeling upset. And I might say, well, what do you think you can do to help yourself feel better? And I have had children look at me with big eyes like, what? what do you mean? Like I get to decide? Because I feel like a lot of kids that we work with, um, I think are told a lot of times, you're doing this wrong and you need to do this so that you do something better. And the internal locus of control comes from giving them the power to take care of themselves. So I remember this very clearly, actually. Last summer, I was working with a kid, and when I said, what do you think what can I said it this way, I said, what can I do to help you move up the scale, to help you feel just a little bit better? You know, you don't have to be a 10, just a few points. And that's when he was like, oh my God, you're going to help me. You're not going to tell me what to do, and you're going to let me decide. He made a decision. He probably asked for like chocolate ice cream, which I couldn't give him. But no, he made a decision of something that I could do to help him. He did it. And then later I was able to say, look, you did it. You took care of yourself. I was just there to help you. But you were the one who made the decision, and then you did it, and then you moved yourself up the scale. So there's that sense of empowerment, and that's the internal locus of control. That's the idea that, and I know that all of us felt less of that internal locus of control with the pandemic, right? We felt like we were out of control. But when we started to, and maybe we didn't do this consciously, but as we're thinking about what we do have control over, and we start to feel more empowered, then we moved up the scale. And this is what happens with the kids too. So sometimes I'll also just start with very, very basic problem solving. You know, like, oh, you're cold. You went down the scale because you're feeling uncomfortable because you're cold. And then you put a jacket on, and now you're feeling warm. So you moved yourself up the scale. You solved the problem. You did that. So we can look at it for creating independence as well as the self-regulation. I think what happens a lot of times for kids when they move down the scale is they start to feel like they don't have that internal locus of control anymore. They don't know what to do to help themselves feel better. And then it starts to snowball because they start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going, even if they don't have that language yet of the scale. I'm starting to go down the scale. I'm going to get really angry. I might get in trouble. You know, all these things might be happening in their head. And like I said, it snowballs and starts to make them feel more and more uncomfortable. If we can catch children before they're all the way at the bottom of the scale, if we can catch them before they're a 2 or a 3, and start giving them some of the language, start giving them some ideas of coping strategies, start reminding them, even better, reminding them of things that have worked for them in the past, then again, we empower them. So on that list you have on your wall, or I've done this with kids in the clinic in their file, I do the same thing. I have a list and I bring it out during my sessions and I stick it on the wall. And I might say, oh, I noticed you did, you know, you weren't feeling so great. And then you did this, you went and bounced on the trampoline 10 times and that moved you up the scale. I'm going to put that on there. I'll also ask them, is that okay? Does that feel like it's something that moves you up? And, you know, really getting a lot of buy-in from them. Again, creating that empowerment. Let's see. Okay. I think that's all I got. So now I can do questions. Does anybody have any specific questions for now? Or I can give some other examples. No questions? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you say try to catch the child before they go into kind of that red zone, and that makes total sense. I mean, how do you think about situations like I mean, there's times it just flips from seemingly it's hard sometimes to distinguish for me like kind of what's the his neurodiversity versus being a willful, obstinate child, just being like, I don't want to set the table, or
right.
and then there'll be that kind of like a meltdown. And I guess I struggle sometimes to understand, right, like, where's that line, and then how do like, is there, this may extend beyond the scale here, but any thoughts on strategies there, how to potentially incorporate this in a way that would again, like, help us deal with these situations where, like, sometimes there's a meltdown and you're just not sure, is it just because he's a little wired differently and he needs to kind of have more of that sense of control, or he just, hey, he's being kind of a little brat, and
right. Yeah. So it's such an excellent question, and you're right, it's a really big question. And I think it's something that we all grapple with everything that we're doing. And so it is a little bit off of kind of the using the emotion scale, but here's what I would say to that. It's none of us, I mean, other OTs, feel free to jump in. I don't think any of us have the exact answer for you on that. It's a really difficult thing to identify. And I think that a lot of it can come from your observations and your understanding also of development, right? Depending on how old your child is, how much of it is behavior, right? Them acting out, that's sort of more typical for their age group versus them having a meltdown because of some sensory needs, let's say, for example, right? So I think that using the scale in terms of trying to get your child to set the table when they don't feel like it, I don't think that would really work. But here's my main thing, and I think as an OT, is most of us I believe, I'll speak for myself, that most behaviors stem from a need to tell you that they feel uncomfortable. I feel like most kids, except for developmentally trying to stand up and show you that, they're learning skills, the behaviors usually come from feeling uncomfortable, feeling out of sorts, and therefore not wanting to do something. I always use the example that when I go to Union Square at Christmas time, I am not my best person. And yes, I feel like punching people sometimes because I'm on sensory overload. And so I don't act in the best way that I can. And I think that happens with children. When they're not feeling comfortable, I mean, like I said, you can think about it for yourself. When you're not feeling your best self, you're not going to act in your best way. Mm-hmm. Does that it's just a brief kind of, Jamie, you look like you want to jump in.
Oh, I was just going to agree that I think that, yeah, like even in the example of not wanting to set the table, right? Like maybe he's playing with something and he doesn't want to shift and do that, right? It does go back to that sense of feeling uncomfortable. And I don't know what you think about this, Corey, but like maybe it won't work to like get him to set the table with the emotions, but like the emotion scale, but it's still a time to talk about it and to recognize it and validate those feelings. And then also, like there are certain jobs we just have in our household, right? And this is one of those jobs. And then go back later maybe and talk about how they felt, and in the future, if there's something that they think that they can do that helps them feel better to get it done. I don't know. Like, I think sometimes going back and rewinding and looking at it without the emotion attached.
I agree, because I do think that kids will do things that we kind of want them to do when they're feeling good. Yeah. Shoot, I had a thought. I was going to say something about, I lost it. Anyway, does that help answer your question at all?
Yeah. No, I was hoping for a silver bullet, but that's the question.
So Aaron says you might want to use the scale for your emotions at the time when you're asking. I think that's what she's referring to.
I don't want to hijack it. I just was thinking maybe it's an opportunity to use it for yourself as the parent to model it.
Oh, for the parent,
Right?
yes.
Setting the table for you, maybe that right in that middle emotion, it doesn't really give you, it's kind of at that have to that you spoke about.
Yeah.
But then you could say that you helping me set the table moves the arrow for me.
Yeah.
Right? Because I need your help and I have a lot. Then that means we can get to the thing that you love to do later, so that there's sort of a little bit of a buy-in, but it's a chance to model it. I always think it's nice to model those scales when there's not a lot of emotion, right? So kind of showing your child how to use it first.
Absolutely.
And on you, then might help that translation. Just a thought.
Right.
I agree. And thank you, Erin, that you reminded me of what I wanted to say, which is not exactly what you're talking about in terms of setting the table, but the idea that you cannot whip out the scale when somebody's at a 2 or a 1, because they'll probably just throw it back at you, right? We have to feel good in our bodies to be able to learn and to be able to participate in all kinds of activities, whether it's setting the table or playing games. And so when that moment is happening, when that one out of control, can't even think is happening, is not the time to bring it out. It's really good to, sort of proactively talk about it and to do some debriefing after those 1 moments happen. Yeah, thanks for the question. Anyone else? Okay. Did I hear someone?
Hi, Corey. I was just gonna
Gigi.
give a suggestion for something that I do at camp when I taught nature camp, and then also with my kids in the clinic. And that is because a lot of our kids want that sense of control. Giving them options is always a great way to kind of mitigate a lot of potential lowering of the scale. So in that situation, I might say, okay, do you want to do it now or in 1 minute? And then they always say 1 minute. And then I found that really helps with transitions. And then again, like Erin and Corey said, that's when I come back in. Oh, we're so flexible to stop playing your game and come and help me in 1 minute. It makes me go up the scale. This is how I feel. Like, how do you feel helping out? And then you kind of bring in the emotion in a more positive light, instead of, like Corey said, getting, not mad at a kid, but pointing out when they're in that bad on the scale is down, right? Lower on this scale. It's a more positive way to point out, oh, wow, look, you brought me and yourself up by contributing to the family. But giving that option really helps with sharing between kids and just kind of those household chores. That's all.
Thank you.
I think also, Gigi, I like the 1 minute as it's a coping strategy, right? You can use it as like, oh, you spent a minute sort of, you gave yourself some time, right? Especially if they're starting to feel frustrated, and you give them a minute, then it's like things start to relax. Things usually tend to not feel so big when you've had some time away from it. Yeah. So, sort of to recap, unless people have more questions, I feel like, the emotion scale is a great way to look at increments of emotions, to understand that our emotions go up and down all day long. There's no black or white. It's just shades of gray in there. And all of our emotions are great. I do think that, if you are familiar with the zones or if you've used the zones, it's really easy. If the kids are used to the zones, it's very easy to sort of transition into the scale. If people haven't used the zones, it's really easy to do the thumbs up, thumbs down somewhere in the middle. Little kids are really good at understanding that. And then you don't even have to be talking about naming emotions, but naming emotions is always really helpful. I think, again, understanding that there's no good or bad emotion, and to empower kids by letting them understand that they are in charge. They already are in charge of making positive decisions and problem solving. Again, as simple as when you're cold, put your coat on. When you're thirsty, you drink water. You make yourself feel better when you're thirsty. So really pointing that stuff out. And also for parents, I think that, just again, anytime you can connect with your therapist, I think most therapists are really willing to do parent consult, and to teach you more about what's going on with your kids. I think that the more you know and the more you understand, and that's why I think the question about sensory versus behavior is always a good one to help kind of understand what's going on with your kids. So yeah, that's all I got. Anyone? Thoughts? Closing comments?
Just thank you very much. I mean, it's really helpful to learn and get new strategies. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any questions at all, you can direct them directly to me, Corey, CORRY, at readysetgotherapy.com. If anyone is interested, I think probably the easiest thing is I can just send you the emotion scale, if you're interested in that, or any other resources. Stay tuned. We'll be doing more of these. Oh, and if you guys have any ideas of things that you really would like us to talk about during our parent ed nights, please just let us know. And we are going to start doing these monthly. Thank you. Thank you all for